In 1992, a man appeared on national television and said something so dangerous that 3 weeks later, he was dead. His name was Michael Talbot, and what he discovered about the nature of reality, governments, universities, and pharmaceutical companies had every reason to care.
What if I told you that reality, this chair, this screen, your own body, is not solid, that it's a projection? Not a metaphor. A literal mathematical projection. In 1947, a Hungarian-British physicist named Denis Gabor invented the hologram. He won the Nobel Prize for it. What almost nobody talks about is what that invention implies about the universe itself. In a hologram, every single fragment of the film contains the entire image. Cut it in half. You don't get half the picture. You get the whole picture, just smaller. This isn't a trick. This is a property of how information is encoded in light. Physicist David Bohm at University College London, one of Einstein's own colleagues, looked at this and realized something that shook the scientific community. He proposed that the universe itself is structured the same way. He called it the implicate order. The idea? What we see is the surface, the explicate layer. Beneath it is a deeper and folded reality, where everything is connected to everything else, simultaneously, with no separation. Here's a real experiment that has been replicated hundreds of times in labs around the world. The double-slit experiment. You fire electrons, individual particles, at a screen with two slits. When no one is watching, the electrons behave like waves. They pass through both slits at once and create an interference pattern. The moment you place a detector to observe which slit the electron passes through, the interference pattern vanishes. The electron suddenly behaves like a particle again. The act of observation collapses reality from a cloud of possibilities into a single outcome. This is not philosophy. This is peer-reviewed physics. The question that kept Talbot awake at night: if consciousness collapses quantum waves into reality, what happens when consciousness leaves the body? Then there's quantum entanglement. In 1972, physicist John Clauser conducted the first hard experimental proof of what Einstein dismissively called spooky action at a distance. Two particles, once connected, instantly mirror each other's states, no matter how far apart they are. In 2022, this work won the Nobel Prize in Physics. The signal between them? Faster than light. Instantaneous. Which, according to Einstein's relativity, should be impossible. Yet it happens. Every time. Talbot's conclusion: separation is an illusion built into the projection. At the deepest level of reality, there is no here and there. There is only one unified field, and we are all nodes within it.
This is where it gets personal and documented. In the 1950s, a California physician named Dr. Philip West treated a patient named Mr. Wright. Stage 4 lymphoma, tumors the size of oranges throughout his chest, neck, and groin. Doctors gave him days to live. Wright had heard about an experimental drug called krabiozin. He begged to be included in the trial. His doctor agreed, more out of mercy than expectation. 3 days later, Dr. West walked into the ward and found Wright out of bed, laughing, walking around. His tumors had shrunk by half. In 10 days, they were gone. The medical team could find no explanation. Months later, Wright read a national report that krabiozin was a fraud, completely ineffective. Within days, his tumors came back. His doctor then did something extraordinary and ethically questionable. He lied. He told Wright the reports were wrong, that he'd received a diluted batch, and that he now had a double-strength version of the drug. He injected Wright with distilled water. The tumors dissolved again. Wright lived cancer-free until he read the final verdict from the American Medical Association. Krabiozin was definitively completely useless. 2 days later, Wright was readmitted to the hospital. He died shortly after. His immune system, capable of destroying terminal cancer, was operated by belief, not by chemistry. This case is documented in peer-reviewed literature. It is real. And it terrifies the pharmaceutical industry because it suggests that the most powerful drug on Earth is already inside every human being, and you can't patent it.
In 2001, Dutch cardiologist Pim van Lommel published a landmark study in The Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. He tracked 344 cardiac arrest patients. 62 of them reported near-death experiences. Vivid, structured, often transformative experiences that occurred while their brains were clinically flatlined. No electrical activity, no blood flow, no measurable brain function. Yet these patients returned with detailed, verifiable memories of events that happened while they were technically dead. Some reported watching their own resuscitation from the ceiling and described specific tools used, conversations held, even the placement of their own dentures. Details later confirmed by nurses and doctors. Van Lommel's conclusion: consciousness does not appear to be a product of the brain. Talbot had arrived at the same place, not through cardiology, but through physics. The holographic model predicts exactly this. If consciousness is the fundamental layer, the deeper frequency from which the material world is projected, then the brain is not a generator of consciousness. It's a receiver. Like a television set doesn't create the broadcast, it tunes into it. And if that's true, what happens when the set gets turned off?
Michael Talbot was 38 years old. He had just finished his most important book. He had just appeared on television describing a framework for reality that had profound implications for medicine, physics, psychology, and what happens after we die. He died of leukemia within months of that broadcast. Some say coincidence, some say tragic irony. A man who wrote about consciousness surviving death did not survive himself. Others note the timing, the questions he was raising about consciousness, about the placebo effect, about the limits of pharmaceutical medicine, about human potential, were questions that powerful institutions had spent decades trying to suppress. We don't know the truth of what happened to Michael Talbot, but we do know this: his ideas did not die with him.
Today, researchers at institutions like MIT, Princeton, and the Max Planck Institute are studying consciousness in ways that would have been career suicide 20 years ago. The Global Consciousness Project, run out of Princeton, has been measuring random number generators around the world since 1998. On September 11th, 2001, the generators began producing non-random patterns hours before the attacks. The same anomaly appeared before the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. The statistical odds of this being chance? Less than 1 in a trillion. As if some field of collective human awareness anticipated what was coming. The mathematics of holography, the Fourier transforms that Talbot described, have now been confirmed in the way the brain processes vision, sound, and touch. The same mathematical language, the same encoding system. Not proof, but as Talbot said himself, you don't find Eskimos speaking Spanish by accident. Before I finish, let me ask you one question. Why don't they teach this in schools? The double-slit experiment, confirmed thousands of times since 1927. Quantum entanglement, Nobel Prize 2022. A man's terminal cancer dissolved by distilled water and belief, documented in peer-reviewed journals. This isn't fringe. This is published science. So why does your doctor never mention it? Follow the money. The global pharma industry is worth $1.6 trillion a year. That entire business model rests on one belief. Your body cannot heal without our products. The moment people understand that the immune system, running on consciousness and expectation, dissolved terminal tumors faster than chemotherapy, that $1.6 trillion starts looking very fragile. Nobody needed to organize a conspiracy. They just needed to protect their incentives. Medical schools funded by pharma grants, journals funded by pharma ads, a $2.6 billion FDA approval process that guarantees only corporations, never individuals, can bring treatments to market. The system doesn't suppress truth. It makes truth economically invisible. Talbot was making it visible. Then he was gone. And he wasn't the first. Wilhelm Reich, Royal Rife. Nikola Tesla? The pattern isn't subtle. Scientists who challenge the official model of reality tend to disappear. Talbot was 38. No history of serious illness. 3 weeks after that TV appearance, gone. Here's where it gets dark. In 2017, the Pentagon declassified a $22 million program studying UAPs. Buried in those documents? Research contracts titled Traversable Wormholes and Negative Energy. Cognitive control of multiple spacecraft simultaneously. The US military was funding research into whether human consciousness could control technology at a distance. And the CIA's Project Stargate, declassified, confirmed, real, ran for 17 years, training people to perceive remote locations using consciousness alone. No cameras, no satellites, just mind. It was used operationally. Real missions. Soviet submarines located, missile sites identified. When they shut it down publicly, the official statement was 4 words. It works. We're done. They knew. They used it. They buried it. Because if consciousness can reach across space with no physical medium, Talbot was right about everything. Here's what actually terrifies the people at the top. You cannot sell someone their own power. You cannot medicate someone into trusting themselves. You cannot keep someone afraid of death, if death is just a frequency change. Every system of control rests on one premise. You are small, fragile, temporary. You need us. Talbot spent his life dismantling that premise. Not with anger, with physics. He never finished his final book. But maybe he didn't need to. They buried the man. They couldn't bury the math. The hologram doesn't have an off switch, and neither do you. Share this before it disappears.